Hey YouTubers, Facebookers and Instagrammers, welcome back to Hampshire Spaniel Training. And in this week's episode, what I thought I would talk about is field trials. What is a field trial? What's a field trial champion? What's a field trial winner? If you've got a working cocker or a springer, you might well have a pedigree for your dog, and you will see in often cases lots of field trial champions down through your pedigree. If it's a personalised pedigree, which a lot of people do, then you might also see field trial winner, field trial award winner, open field trial winner. And in this video, I just thought I'd explain the ins and the outs and the bits and bobs that go in and around field trials. So field trials are designed to test a dog to have certain strengths and avoid certain weaknesses. So essentially, a spaniel needs to be able to hunt, to find game, to present a flush for a gun. The dog needs to be able to show that it's steady, that it's quiet, which is not always the easiest thing, especially for cockers. They must be able to show the ability to take handling commands, control. They have their mouth tested, i.e. that they're not hard mouthed, that they don't damage game. And all these different bits come together to create a field trial. At the very bottom, you have what's called a field trial award winner, which is a dog that's perhaps trained and competed in novice trials. Now, a novice trial, which is what I talk about first, is the novice part is the dog, not the handler. So you could have a professional handler running a novice dog. And to get out of the novice category, typically they have to win a novice trial. Okay? If they win a novice trial, then they're eligible to run and compete in open stake trials. Now, open stake trials are qualifiers for the British Championships, whether that be the cockers or the springers. Now, to become a champion dog, they will generally have to win a novice trial, make their way into open stakes, compete in open stakes. And if they manage to win 2 open stakes, whether in the same year, 2 years apart, 3 years apart, doesn't really matter. If they win 2 open stakes in their career lifetime, they will then become a champion. Now, I make that sound very, very easy, but there are so many different things that are involved. So often people say, oh, you know, I've got to beat X, Y, Z amount of dogs. Your first enemy when you are competing is yourself and the dog. So the first part is to try and get through that trial without getting eliminated. As I said, the dog needs to show ability to hunt at a reasonable pace. If it's plodding about, that dog's not going to make the grade. So it needs to show style and ability to find game within a certain distance, which I would typically say is within about 20 feet either side of you, to keep things nice and simple. It's got to be steady when it finds a bird, sit up, be patient. The judge would then tell you when they want you to send your dog, and if your dog was to run in before you got sent, you'd be disqualified. If your dog took too much ground, it was ignoring the whistle, you could get corrected for being out of control, in which case you'd be asked to put your lead on and you'd be out of the trial. If your dog failed to pick the bird that you wanted, or they sent you for, the dog wouldn't take control handling onto that retrieve, you would get disqualified. If the dog made a noise while it was waiting, real bad cocker trait for a lot of cockers, you would be disqualified. If the dog brought the bird back and it had been damaged and they were unhappy that the bird had been mishandled by the dog, you would get disqualified. So one of the things we often talk about is, oh yes, I've got X, Y, Z people to beat, but actually your first objective is to get through both your runs. So we'll talk about that next. So we have generally 2 runs. There'll be 2 judges. Sometimes it's a 4-judge system. Generally 16 to 18 dogs will compete. The odd numbers will start on the right and the even numbers will start on the left. Now you could be running quite near another handler. You could be 100 yards apart. Your dog will be hunting, you find a bird, it flushes it, your dog is steady, the judge will send your dog. Ideally, they're looking for a flush and a retrieve on each side. If you make it through your first run on whichever side you start on, then you will get to have your second run under the other judge. If you make it through under the second judge, you're then potentially in the mix to make the awards or to win. But I ran in quite a lot of trials before I even managed to finish one. It's one of those things. I was chatting with a client earlier where I was saying, you go and watch the trial and you think, well, that doesn't look too difficult, I can do that. And then you have a go and you go, actually, that's quite a lot harder than I thought. And there's so many different things that you can't control. So I always say to clients, control everything you can, but the things you can't control, a gun could shoot you an awkward bird, which could end up running and you end up first or second dog down on the retrieve. And although you might not necessarily get disqualified, that puts you out of the chance of winning. There are so many things that you can't control, but the things that you can control, you always want to make sure that you control as best you can. So as I said, hopefully you get your first run done. If everything goes okay, then make it through. You have your second run under the other judge. Typically a lot of trials, sometimes half the card, as we would say, 16 or the 18 dogs that entered or are competing. Maybe half will finish. Sometimes some trials, only 2 or 3 dogs finish. They don't have to necessarily award a first place as well. Sometimes they might award a second and a third and a couple of certificates of merit. It varies massively. But in a good trial where there's plenty of game, that gives everyone a fair chance to show their dog off and do as well as you can. But one of the things I always think when I'm running is I want to try and make sure everything that I control, I do as well as I can. Beyond that, there's not much I can do. And ground can vary massively. If you're up north, you might be running on rabbits, a lot of rabbits, flushing rabbits, sending your dogs, the dogs having to take lines on rabbits and pick the retrieves. Down here in Hampshire, we have an awful lot of bramble, so they have to be able to cope with bramble. You know, if they don't have that power to get through, sometimes that can be a problem. Sometimes people put their leads on the dog because they know the dog is starting to not listen to them and they don't want the dog to go too wrong. One of the things I always saying, if you're thinking about trying, do as much training as you can and as little trialing as you can. Because every time you run a dog, you're sort of losing a bit of a life in the sense that a dog's just catching on to what it can get away with and what it can't do. And some dogs stay honest for their whole life, some dogs don't, some have a limited career. I had a bitch years ago that I won with, and she only had about 4 or 5 trials in her, and then she just got wise to it and she was starting to, the expression is monkey me about, and at that point her competitive career was gone. Still ended up being a fantastic shooting dog, but you have to be so careful with a trial dog. You need to make sure that you're keeping on top of them all the time. Otherwise they start to slip away and make mistakes, and they realize they get away with a mistake in a trial, and then you can be in a lot of trouble, and before you know it, that dog that was fantastic is sort of going out of control, and you're struggling to then handle it. So as I said, you'll see field trial champion, you might see field trial winner, award winner, open winner. They have to win a novice generally. Then they go up to open class. If they can win 2 open class trials, then they become a champion. And that's what you'll see in your dog's pedigree. So if you see a certain dog like Mysidur and Scimitar or Dandrew Druid, those are dogs that became champions of very prominent dogs in the cocker world. Same things like Clabberat in the Springers. But as I said, the main thing is they've got to be able to do all these elements first. They've got to be able to hump well, be steady, have a good mouth on them, take handling control. And generally you want a quite honest dog, or train as an honest dog as you can. Anyway, that's my brief explanation of what field trials are. I hope that gives you a better idea of what's required in a field trial. So next time you see those through your pedigree, you've got a bit of a better understanding what's involved in that. Anyway, I hope this video has been some help. If you're getting a new puppy, or you've got a new puppy and you're looking for some help and support in your training, maybe look at doing my online training, which is all done through WhatsApp. Send me a message on our Facebook page, Hampshire Spaniel Training. Any training products that you see me using in my other videos are available on our other page, Spaniel Training Kit. Anyway, hope you have a good weekend, and I will catch you very soon. Happy training.